You are listening to WXRWLP Milwaukee on 104.1 FM and on riverwestradio.com everywhere. Now you can also listen by telling your smart speaker to play River West Radio. Support for this program comes from Collectivo Coffee and Troubadour Bakery, makers of artisan breads and scratch-baked goodies. Visitors to Collectivo's Bayview Cafe can look in on Troubadour Bakers as they prepare breads and cafe favorites daily. More info is at collectivocoffee.com. And, hey, before I forget, I'm just going to read this too. Zav handed this to me. River West Radio is looking to hire one or two individuals to seek underwriting support from Milwaukee businesses. This position is paid by commission. For more information, visit River West Radio on Facebook or email admin@riverwestradio.com. Okay, excellent. It is done. Yeah, otherwise it's like, oh man, I forgot to read that. So we'll take care of that right off the bat. Gabe, thank you for calling in. And if you're listening live, it's evening, obviously, or night in Milwaukee. And warm weather for the next couple days. And that's, I don't know what to say about that. I was hoping for a little bit more snow. We probably will get some, but not much at this point. And just finished the play album by David Rimmer this morning. What had happened was that I did something, I think it was for the Alchemist Theater, a little one-time only cameo at the beginning of Lobotomy the musical. And I can't memorize anything, so I had played a doctor with a clipboard, so the lines are right there. Yeah, good. But the resonance of that is that the husband and wife, or boyfriend or girlfriend or husband and wife in the play, were moving from Milwaukee to out east, and she goes, "Hey, I've got a lot of theater books, man, and we won't be taking them with." And I understood where that was going, and I said, I am 101% down. And went over there, and, yep, got a couple moving bagfuls of theater books. And a lot of these are hardcover plays, hardcovers from the early 80s, and I'm methodically going through them throughout the years. So album was the one I just finished, again, by David Rimmer. I also my colleague wonderfully had presented me what playwrights talk about when they talk about writing, and a number of days ago I had finished that, but it is an excellent book. It came out in 2017, and it was just a joy to read through the winter months. And I want to wholeheartedly thank my colleague for that out of the blue surprise, because it was very, very informative, and I really appreciate that most definitely. Film-wise, what a great thing to have experienced on 16 millimeter, 7 keys to Baldpate. That's Baldpate. Just from memory, I don't really go on the internet. I really could care less. It's like Larry King says, out of the 8,761 things on his list, it ain't on it. But it ain't one of them. But anyway, I believe the first incarnation of that film was 1917. It was actually, I think, also based on a stage play, but this version is from the mid-40s. But anyway, I knew nothing about it. It was in a historical building in the Downer neighborhood in Milwaukee. And, so, just lost my train of thought. So anyway, yes, it's in the Downer Avenue neighborhood. It's a historic building on the historic site list, and they occasionally show films on 16 millimeter. And it was a rainy, obviously damp night, misty, and a acquaintance had let me know that it was playing, and I said, this is a perfect night. So we went and checked it out, and it's one of those kind of like in the mansion cozy. So I'm going to be on that play like nobody's business, seeking that out, which is wonderful. And I want to say thank you, Joe, who I'm sure is not listening. For why did I say that? It's a reasonable assumption. For alerting us to that film, I really appreciate it. We had a really good time, and of course, it was great. There's a lot of work to be done today, and one of our Milwaukee radio stations on the left end of the dial was playing 3 hours straight of Black Sabbath. Because I don't deal with commercial radio, so some of you guys, you know, it's 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365. You get your fill of whatever it is you listen to, and others of us, you know, got like 3 hour increments a week to check out our stuff. And I think it was Tony Iommi's birthday about a week ago or so, and that's why they were doing it. So that's cool. Yeah, I really dig that Monday show with you know, lots of Montrose and Uriah Heep and on and on and on and on, Three-Man Army, and you know, it's just a lot of great stuff. Certainly stuff that they do not play on commercial radio. So it's a real treat to listen to that. That's why people are like, what do you mean you got to listen to the radio right now? It's, well, you know, I'm not a 98%er, man, so I've got like 3 hours a week to listen to this, and so that's that. And yeah, so I got a man just looking at me right now. Let's see. Hey, Gabe, we haven't forgot about you. It's 7:07 Central Time, and let me just think if there's anything else of consequence. Well, yeah, I got great films from the library, great films from other sources. Can't wait to check them out. But it's only a few nights a week you can see them. So, and I know there's a 35 millimeter print of North by Northwest next week. Totally down for that. Dreyer's The Passion of Joan of Arc will be, I think, rolling next week. Totally down for that. And I got to remind myself there's a Shakespeare involvement tomorrow night, so I cannot forget that. Okay, so Gabe, we're going to get to you in a moment. And when I walked in, Mark Winter, I said, man, it looks like Mark Winter, because I was thinking about him for this particular part that I was casting. I thought the dude was an actor, and he says, well, I've done a little acting. I don't know. It was you know what? Let me turn you up. You know, we got to keep it clean, right? I mean, Mark Winter is a great guy. The last person I have to tell that to, but we never know what lurks inside the heart of humankind or the fermentations of their latent psychology. So I just got to do that. Mark, so how are you doing, man?
I'm great, Mark. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you're more than welcome. And you got a decent voice, man.
Good, thank you.
Yep,
I've been told I have a face for radio, so now I'm trying it out.
Okay, yeah, a little bit of a cleverness there, I'll note.
Very little.
So, you've been given the ground rules. Do you think in your mind you have formulated how you'll approach this?
I have. I've
Okay.
been going over it in my head, and I think I'm ready whenever you are.
Well, I've been born ready, man, so now it's your turn.
Awesome. Well, again, thanks again for having me on. And Mark and River West Radio have been very gracious enough to let me come on and just tell everybody in the audience about a fundraiser I'm in charge of. It is going to be at Triskelly's Restaurant on Sunday, March 11th from 2 to 6 p.m. And everybody can get information on our Facebook page, which is called Make It Rain for the Brain. That's Facebook at Make It Rain for the Brain.
Excellent. Well, that's very well done, and hopefully innocuous enough. Well, we'll see. But anyway, so I ran into you at that MFA opening night salvo at the Art Museum. Would that be correct?
That was the last time, we ran into each other there. That was back in November, I want to say.
Yeah, probably so. I'll tell you, one night it was one of the coldest nights because me and Lamont, we parked on Lincoln Memorial Drive and walked there. It was like, oh man, see you, Zav. Keep the faith, Zav, and stay strong, my man. Zav LaPlay is headed out. He's really is just keeps this whole thing going. So thank you very much, Zav. So yeah, no, it was an extremely cold night. And I really looked forward to that affair because one of the first things is, it's in the beautiful, Calatrava section of the art museum, and all the, and I went right for that killer table where you could sit down, see everyone, but it would take people effort to actually try to start talking your ear off because I was, it was a small table,
Right.
and we were sitting there. So I just totally dig it. It was all about film, and I was, like I said, tripping out. Lamont's great company. He knows what I know, man, and just trip out on the whole thing. And that's where I had last ran into you, man. So, that
was another happy coincidence that.
Yeah, it's amazing too, man. Because like I say, I walk in here, I said, man, it looks like the dude, and sure enough, it is.
It was meant to be.
Yes, absolutely. Well, you know what? Okay, Mark. Well, I'll tell you what. This is one of the most briefest guest spots in the history of radio, but that's cool. And Mark, I wish you all the very, very best, man. And how does that sound?
I appreciate it, man. Everything that you do and you help with, and I appreciate your input in the community and what you do for everybody in film industry here in Milwaukee.
Yeah, I don't do nothing, man. I sit on my living room couch and read, and then when I film, that's my business. But Mark, man, thanks again, dude. Have a very, very good night. You look shocked. That's good. You're getting your money's worth, man. I'm going to get Gabe on the air, and Mark, seriously, I wish all the best, man, and then we're going to talk shortly.
You bet. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, thank you. That was Mark Winter, and Gabe, we're going to get you on. And, hey, here, come here, give me a handshake. There you go. And two, best Mark. And absolutely. And then we'll talk shortly. How does that sound? Okay. Yep. Okay, we'll see you, Mark. Keep the faith, too, man. We'll see you. Okay. So, Gabe, I'm gonna get to you, and just give me a minute here so I can trip out on existing. And very, very cool. So anyway, yes, I cannot wait to research more 7 Keys to Baldpate, a cozy old house. A writer takes on a bet that he can crank out a story in 24 hours in this old mansion, but then invariably more and more mysterious guests keep arriving to befuddle his ambition. So it's good. Let's see. Okay, Gabe, I am going to bring you up. You still there, my man?
Mark, I'm here.
Oh, yeah, you're cranking, dude. I'm going to bring you down.
Oh, that's good. Oh, wow. Yeah.
Wow.
I kiss that red too much. Getting in the yellow, that's good. Getting in the green is always good. But, man, getting in that red,
yeah,
it can be a little too much.
Yeah, we got to.
Man,
I'm just looking at you here on the board. Yeah, you came on strong, my man.
That's good. Yeah, it's just been a crazy weekend. Life just goes on, man. Moving in with new people, leaving, moving out from other situations, just, moving on, keeping commitments, keeping jobs, keeping dreams alive, keeping good stuff going. So it's good. It's good that I just had a lengthy conversation with Zav yesterday. I called him and I asked him if he wanted to come on the show. And
oh yeah, that's he had told me that he wouldn't be able to make it, and I can verify that because the dude just left.
Yeah, well, due to certain circumstances beyond his control, he had a prior commitment, and but he is going to return on just like James Bond. Zav Play will return on March 20. Whatever the mid-March 20s of Monday is, Zav's going to be there. So it's about a month. It's a month from today. So I'm eagerly looking forward to that. Zav and I had a great conversation, and we just chatted about the old days, about the early days of the radio station, the early days of the show, back when it was My Dinner with Gabe, and then back when you, Mark, first came on, and it was
yeah. You know what? I remember that first time it was with Carl Bogner, and the filmmaker, a European, starts at a K. I forgot.
Oh, there's like these three filmmakers that all.
Including like Kiarostami and that. And I want to say this. I remember
Kaurismäki.
Right, and exactly. And I was sitting there. It was you, Carl Bogner, and Zav, and I believe. And I was.
It was.
It was the first time I was on, and I was thinking, man, should I say what I really think about this filmmaker? I didn't know the protocol, for real, and so I just went with whatever. But that's not happening no more. So anyway, my man,
that's real good. Well, Mark, I remember, and what was real good. What you spoke your mind. I'll those early shows. I remember them just so clearly. Bogner came on, and I just remember thinking, man, we really have something here because Zav talks in the Zav play way. He's got a very eloquent and loose and very learned and very intelligent and experienced way of speaking, and it's very formal and it's very casual at the same time. He has this sort of direct symposium way of speaking from the altar, from speaking from the stage, and sort of speaking from the audience all at the same time. And it kind of whirls around from perspective in this sort of Fellini-esque circus of, because Zav just has done so much, seen so much, thinks so much, has experienced so much, and, has been on both sides. He's a thoughtful, present film scholar as a viewer, and he's also, an accomplished, brilliant filmmaker and an avant-garde one at that. So talking to him about art cinema and mainstream cinema, you're not going to get answers that you always expect, because what was always refreshing about those early days of the show is I never knew exactly what the three of our opinions were going to be on any subject. So like the De Palma shows were always really good, talking about David Cronenberg, but I remember that Kaurismäki show because we asked Bogner to come on, and he's the professor. He was a professor of film studies. I think he was like, if not the head of the department, he was like the guy that ran a ton of stuff. He was in charge of the LGBT Film Festival. Was in charge of programming for a lot of other stuff. I mean, too numerous, and I don't want to miscredit him or undercredit him, because that guy just like runs on just on jet fuel. And just it always still comes across as extremely eloquent and polite and mannered and sophisticated. As just it's just unbelievable how much strength that guy has. So I was just extremely honored to have him come on the show, because I had had him as a professor, and he comes on and he just has that extremely eloquent, thoughtful way of speaking, and you just didn't say anything. I remember you were sitting in the.
I didn't know what to do, man.
The four of us were sitting there, and you had your notes, and you were just sort of and you were patiently waiting your turn to speak. And I remember, I spoke, and Zav spoke, and Bogner spoke, and we were all like, "Oh, these are such interesting films." And Bogner's like, "This is maybe my favorite filmmaker." The Proletariat trilogy, which and all four of the films that kind of fall into the unofficial trilogy. There's a fourth film that he kind of unofficially included in that. And he's like, "Oh, these films just have this thoughtfully precise manner of looking at things from inside the veil of communism and outside, and they have this sort of indirect poetic resonance and all this other stuff." And I'm, and I was like, well, I think they're really good at smart entertainments, but I don't think they're these profound works of art. But, and Zav was really blown away by his work, and I was like, oh yeah, I've never seen this guy's work before. This is really great. And, Bogner said one of these movies is his favorite film. And I remember you finally came on and you're like, listen, man, I hate to break the mood here, but I got to say, I just totally did not buy these films at all. I was like, this really is something.
That warms my heart.
Yeah, I really appreciated that, Mark, and I still do.
Yeah, I mean, well, what can one say, man? Sounds like you're outside.
Oh, I am. Yeah, okay. I've been moving all weekend, and I'm just I'm literally in the middle of the third day of moving, and I was just moving couches and dressers and tables and stuff for all day. And I just got done 5 minutes ago, and there's always more to do. There's days of cleaning ahead. There's days of unpacking, sorting, organizing, throwing away. It's just, and it's all someone else's stuff too. So it's an adventure to say the least. But anyway, it's around that time of the year again. You know, the Academy Awards are upon us, and we've been discussing for many weeks some of the contemporary trends and topics in film culture and in, you know, this larger narrative of pop culture and just culture as a whole, some of which, you know, strikes me as interesting, and some of which strikes me as completely not interesting. You know, some of these race topics, some of these topics of sex and gender and discrimination and sexual harassment and stuff. And some of this stuff, it's just a media circus. And there's some truth to it and there's some hype to it. To all these issues, there's like this 50-50 coin. And depending on where you stand on it, some of it's like 95% and 5%, or it's like 50-50. It's all over the map, but it's become a part of the discussion of entertainment culture, because it's where a fair amount of a lot of this discussion has been sparked in a few years, and then it's been linked or it's crossed over into other aspects of culture. So it's been an interesting period for movies and for television and pop culture and music and all that stuff. But there's, you know, it wouldn't be interesting if there weren't interesting works of art coming out of it. If the discussion hadn't led to other opportunities and other, like Jordan Peele making Get Out. I've been listening to interviews that the Directors Guild puts out, which they put out one of the best podcasts, period. But in terms of film podcasts or pop culture podcasts, I don't think there's anything that equals the Director's Chair, which is the Directors Guild of America's almost weekly podcast, where they have a screening at the Directors Guild Theater in New York. And following the screening, they have a member of the Directors Guild, interviewing the director of said film and having a discussion among his peers, his or her peers, excuse me. And, you know, and usually it's like a collection of white males. And, you know, I was going through the list and looking back, because they've only been archiving and saving and recording these interviews for the past, I'd say, about a year and a half. And they've been doing this stuff for like 27 years or something like that, the Director's Chair, where they have this, you know, weekly or bi-weekly, even like a few times a week screening, and then they have this Q&A session, and, you know, you just have a screen among your peers. And I don't know that there is a more interesting set of casual film interviews that have as much casually explicit discussion about the mechanics of storytelling, script writing, pre-production, post-production, using casual language, but speaking in this very experienced way. And there's just a candidness, because they're interviewing each other. They're not being interviewed by journalists. So the nature of the questions that they get asked are a little more familiar and a little more less like they're being interviewed for a publication and more like they're talking with a friend of theirs. And usually they are. They usually are talking with someone who they're on a first-name basis with, and in many cases is actually a close personal friend. So it's super cool to hear these, or you know, a collaborator in some sort. And the past 3 weeks, they've done this series called Meet the Nominees, where they have the 5 nominees for the Directors Guild nomination for Best Director. And they have the 5 nominees sit on stage, and they just have they have a peer of theirs ask them questions, and it's like a 3-hour ceremony. And you know, they keep the questions real basic, but it's the banter between them, and it's the way that the answers differ from person to person, from director to director, and the way that those answers differ between those films and the style of those films, and the way that the answer, you know, the way that you can see the context of what they mean in that particular film, and in some cases within their larger body of work. So just super cool stuff, like how do you do rehearsals? How do you translate to the screen? How do you work? You know, how do you look at the difference between your shooting script and your finished product? You know, what's your style of post-production? You know, how do you like to do posts? what's your editing process like? How do you do not rehearsals, but how do you do a casting call and all this other stuff? It's just super cool. And, you just go down the line, and after a while, especially if you listen to NPR, you've heard a number of these voices already. Greta Gerwig, Guillermo del Toro, Christopher Nolan. So they're almost like familiar, like the familiar sounds of Friends. And
you make it sound all so cozy.
It is, Mark, and I'm glad you used that word because it's so eloquent. Because these are some of the most interestingly intelligent filmmakers making contemporary mainstream films, and that's the key word, is mainstream. These are not like oblique, obtuse, impenetrable works of art, which I love. Impenetrable, oblique works of cantankerous art. I mean, stuff like that. It's like, there's no definitive, clear answer. Mark, I did finally see the movie Thelma too, and that falls into that category.
I'm glad you see that, and I want to. I'm all ears, but let me put this out. If my colleagues listening, think Phantom Thread, think I, Tonya, and that's all I have to say. Think about that. And okay, and now Gabe, please, Thelma.
Well, Thelma falls into this realm of almost like post-Cronenbergian mysticism, where it's like I'm not sure what to make of the film because it doesn't have easy answers. It does, and it's where plot is secondary. Where it's just it's the experience of the film, moment to moment. The only other film that really the only other two films that captured me the same way with this certain sense of constantly, where you must pay attention to what's going on in the film because you just have to. You're missing something if you're not paying full attention. Phantom Thread just has that delicious, dark imagery. Now, Mike Offerowski came on the show last week and talked about his top 10, which sort of became his top 15, 16, and all of his entries are just top notch. They're all like, there's no way I could limit my top 10 to just 10 films either. So that's why I always just say the best of the year. I'd only pick a handful of films that I would put on that list that he didn't include. The Spielberg documentary that was on HBO earlier in the year. The Black Coat's Daughter, which is just a really unnerving and really bizarre horror film that, has a sort of simple plot, I guess, and it doesn't need much because it's a film that's completely drenched in this gothic sort of Lovecraftian atmosphere of larger themes that are really subterranean more than anything. They're not explicit. And Logan Lucky, which is just a wildly fun and straightforward entertainment from the return of Steven Soderbergh, which, upon thinking about, when I watched it, I was like, that is just one of the best capers I've ever seen. That's one of the best heist films I've ever seen. It's one of the best group comedies I've ever seen. And when I thought about it more, I was like, that really is one of the most shrewd films about class I've ever seen, because it isn't a film that takes this moral stance where you have to agree with it, where it's like wagging its finger at you or wagging its finger at someone. It just lays its cards right out on the table, and it just allows you to make up your own mind. But it is an entertainment first and foremost, and it's just a decidedly brilliant one. It's some of the best filmmaking of the year. It's Steven Soderbergh. I don't think I have to say more.
Wait, what film are you talking about?
Logan Lucky. Okay,
Steven Soderbergh. We did begin with Thelma, correct?
Yes, I was talking about Thelma, and then I, veered off into the territory of talking about some of the best films of the year.
Just want to know where everybody's at. Thank you, Gabe.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Thelma is one of those films that just it's ethereal, and it's hard to describe because like I said, the plot is really secondary, and I would put Selma on the list of the best films of the year. The only films that I can really compare to it, like I said, were Phantom Thread and I guess you could throw The Blackcoat's Daughter in there to some degree, but also The Killing of a Sacred Deer. Because you're dealing with
The
films
Killing
that
of
are
a Sacred
smart.
Deer, Gabe. Is that something I should be checking out, my man?
Mark, I think you would greatly benefit from watching that movie because it's up your alley. That's all
Okay.
I'm going to say. I'm not gonna say whether you're gonna love it or not because it's one of those films.
Does it remind us of Nocturnal Animals?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Well, if you're a fan of Dogtooth or of The Lobster, it's definitely up your alley because it's the same director.
Okay.
So really, really surreal, smart, if a little too snappy for my taste.
What do you mean by
But,
it's a little too snappy? I mean, let's get to some specifics on that. I have a moderate interest in that. Well, no, I have a more than a moderate interest in this answer.
There's a real precision to his use of absurdist visual language, where I was talking about this with Mike Offerowski the other day. Actually, he just got around to watching Killing of a Sacred Deer, and a lot of my a lot of my close film friends have all agreed that there's just something otherworldly about this movie that they can't define, and that's really what marks all of his Yorgos.
Why can't they define it?
Well, that's what makes his work so brilliant, is that it's surreal, it's horrifying, it's hilarious, and it's Kubrickian, I guess would be the closest term that I can come to it. It's somewhere between David Lynch, John Waters, and Stanley Kubrick. If you're going to use signposts in order to describe, because his work is really indescribable, but there's always something that I feel is unfinished in terms of my own taste. I feel like there aren't themes that are explored. There isn't something that's satisfying enough. But because his work is so dense and it's just so well laid out, the script is extremely laid out, the film is extremely laid out, the visuals are extremely precise. But you're dealing with someone who's a master of restraint, and so in the barriers of all that restraint, these narrative extremes, because it appears a lot of these movies appear to exist within the confines of the natural world, of the normal non-cinema world, and then these elements that appear to possibly be either of a nightmare, of a surrealist film, of a sort of dystopian science fiction novel, maybe a Russian dystopian science fiction novel, or an Eastern or a Polish one from the 80s. There's just something off in that upper level science fiction sort of way, where there's that line between dreams and pure logic. There's just something indescribable that's off, but it's consistently off. And so his films are of the highest order. I highly recommend them to people who love movies. But his films don't always work 100% for me. I'm not enraptured and in love and enamored with his films, but it's work of the highest order. And so I always recommend that people watch his stuff. Dogtooth blew me away. Of his three films, Dogtooth is the one that stuck with me the most. It's just bizarre. It's beautiful. And I think the fact that it's the most subtle and restrained is probably its finest feature. But The Lobster got a lot of press, and that's what really put him on the map as a major filmmaker to look for. And The Killing of a Sacred Deer actually made less waves and less splash when it came out, which is surprising to me because it has more bombast and it has more of a lasting effect. The Lobster is a really absurdist film, and it's a really fun movie, and it's a weirdly powerful film, but The Killing of a Sacred Deer is truly shocking and bizarre, and it's unforgettable, but there's just something I couldn't quite define that just didn't add up for me. And that's the nature of sort of off-kilter science fiction like that. It's not supposed to add up. It's not supposed to follow any rhythm. It has its own logic. It has its own tide, I guess. And, some of these great filmmakers, that, or I should say filmmakers that get widely praised, or there's, where their work is clearly extremely intelligent or extremely precise, or it's just technically astute, and there's layers to it. It's not just simple, point and shoot, go from point A to point B, plot, some base logic, maybe some good acting here and there, but there's none of this deep humanism underneath the surface where there's layers to the story, layers to the acting, and layers to the film. And even films that have that, sometimes there's just something consistently wrong with a director, in my opinion, where I just consistently have the same feeling from a director's work, where I leave 2 or 3 movies with the same feeling of, I just don't like this guy's work, even though there's something really beautiful here, and there's something really admirable and powerful. Not every film that is notably well made or poetically precise, or that has any of these fine qualities, is going to work for everyone. It's not supposed to. But yeah, The Killing of a Sacred Deer is definitely not for the squeamish. It's not a film to watch with people that are sensitive. But it's very, very good. And it's Mark, if you're going to talk about 98% cinema, it's definitely not in that group of that 98 percentile cinema.
Yeah, no, I will definitely check it out, man.
Mm-hmm. Really cool stuff. I definitely put that on the best of the year list for a lot of reasons. Even though I wasn't necessarily in love with the film, it definitely falls on that upper level cinema. Logan Lucky, top-notch entertainment. It is a mainstream film that follows these mainstream mechanisms, but really top-notch, highly entertaining stuff. Steven Soderbergh is just a master storyteller. I've never seen work that he's done that I haven't liked to some degree, and he's been all over the map throughout his career. So super cool stuff there. The Spielberg documentary that HBO put out earlier in the year, just really, really, really upper-level filmmaking, great documentary filmmaking. And
it covered essentially the entirety of his career from his initial
absolutely.
television days on up. Would that be correct?
Everything. It covered, what's the show that Rod Serling did after The Twilight Zone?
Night Gallery.
It covers his Night Gallery stuff.
Right,
he
did an episode with Joan Crawford, right?
Yep, it covers, Mark, it covers everything. It shows, it's so in-depth.
What's the running time on that?
It's 2.5 hours.
Oh, really? So that's not bad.
So
okay. That's
it's
giving it some breath.
It goes in. Yeah, it goes in. And the fact that you're dealing with a master visual craftsman like Spielberg, one thing I read a few years ago is that there probably is no better filmmaker during his prime, and depending on what your taste is, you might say his prime, depending on, whether you're a big fan of this really dark, heady, layered science fiction of his late 90s, early 2000s stuff like AI, Minority Report, and War of the Worlds, which, and that goes into Munich, this sort of almost like Alan J. Pakula type, really, really, almost un-Spielbergian stuff by the nature of what you would consider Spielbergian in the 1980s. Those films are about as un-Spielbergian and the questioning of the original ethos of what Spielbergian meant as you can get. But, when you cross over from those initial movies and then you get into this really super heady, really dark, menacing, super violent stuff, it's just, you could say that that's the height of the Spielbergian vision, but some people would say, the stuff that he did in the, Close Encounters and then Raiders of the Lost Ark and on and on. It's his large action epic opuses. The link that you could see between those groups of films is his use of blocking, his use of shooting, and his use of visual storytelling, and the way that he can still manage to elicit these almost puppet-like precise performances out of people that fall into a cognitive web. And the fact that he creates a cognitive map in the viewer, and that there maybe is no other filmmaker that's so, maybe besides Kubrick, and there's handfuls of other films that have that. And the key, and a lot of times the key with that, with creating these big scale films that have these big sets and these big scenes and that go over these large crosses of distances, are these big budget films. You're not going to get that with small, intimate, independent films that are more like plays. And it's not to say that that's a detriment, because, I mean, in many ways, those small, independent films are vastly more intelligent. But Spielberg's use of blocking and his visual panache and sensibility and his way of enveloping the viewer past that fourth wall, taking you into the movie, in the way that films in the 80s, in the 70s and the 80s really did. That's definitely a common thread that I've heard from people, is the way that Spielberg's movies just wrap you up in the blanket of cinema. I don't know that there's another filmmaker that had such a wide effect on a generation of people in terms of creating.
Hey, is that train going east or west?
I have no idea. It's in the distance.
You could hop it to Hollywood, like so Dennis Hopper used to dream about outside Dodge City, was that train headed west, and where it would end up at the in the western horizon. He actually, the truth of the thing is, Gabe, is that he didn't just go to Hollywood. It's actually, as a teen, his family moved out to San Diego. He got involved with the La Jolla Playhouse, and then ultimately went north into Los Angeles. So it's not like he just headed there out of the blue, but it was in increments. One being he actually moved out there as a teenager with his folks. I digress. Continue, sir.
No. Good stuff. Dennis Hopper is one of the key players of Hollywood and of the story.
The train reminded me of it. I'm sorry, man.
It's great stuff.
It had to happen.
Mark, have you seen Phantom Thread?
That's why I just tried to drop a unconscious seed into my cohort's ear that Phantom Thread and I, Tanya, have yet to be seen. So that was that whole codification, and I'm not going to use the other pronunciation of it, because it's like comparable or comparable, But anyway, to answer your question, and I know you were looking for a far more reductive answer than that, I've yet to see it.
Oh, man. Well, Mark, last week on the show, and Mike Offerosky, he was going down his list, and he had sometimes multiple entries for certain numbers, like, my sixth favorite film of the year is a tie again. And I love when people are just so fanatic about their list, like when they just count the reasons that a movie, like, mathematically deduce almost like this variable level of greatness in their own films, not necessarily in someone else's work, but just how much did I love this movie, and really thinking about it. Well, why? Using that Aristotelian aspect of intelligence, reason, and doubt, even about opinions, not just substantial objective truths, but looking at your own opinions with that kind of skepticism and shrewd doubt in the highest sense of the word, not this Americanized, bastardized sense of the word, but truly analyzing and narrowing your scope on who am I and what are my opinions, and what embodies my mind, what embodies my human experience. And a lot of that has to do with your take on how certain people come across to you, and in the modern age, how people come across to you, the types of people that you prefer. And in the modern age, we spend so many years of our lives, the average person, not you, Mark, the average person will spend a lot of years of their life watching, actual years of their life watching TV. And Mark, that's why I've got to commend you. You've always taken a stand against television.
No, I haven't. You do what you want. You can walk off the 40-second story of the first Wisconsin for all I care. I just choose not to do it.
No, I know you don't, and I appreciate that, Mark, because I've spent a lot of years looking at screens, watching movies, watching TV shows and stuff, and there are just some years where I'm like, not this year. I just can't do it as much as others. I think 2014 was a year when I really cut back on the amount of films I watched. I think I maybe pulled in about 100, like 110, compared to the usual like 375 that I watch a year on average. It was just life had to be lived. I lived in Florida. You have to walk in the sun. You have to talk to people. You have to meet people. And at the time, writing had to happen every day. Reading was more important than watching movies or, reading about movies. It's just, life just had a lot of living that had to happen. But assessing your opinions about the things that you do, and if you love to watch movies, if you love to listen to music, and if you love reading books, thinking about why you love those things and thinking and assessing what your take is and going deeper and deeper into those takes, it's infinitely rewarding. So I always appreciate people getting very precise about their opinion, and Mike Offerosky is no exception to that.
Yeah, Mike's a great guy.
Absolutely.
It's like talking with him. It's like a nice, cozy fireside chat, man.
So yeah, he at the end of his list, we were counting down from 10 to 1 with the suspenseful parameter of just like a movie whose titles are appearing on screen throughout it. Like you're slowly getting to the end, like where the final case, where the answer to the case will be revealed, and the inspector is not one step ahead and is in fact one step behind. And Mike, like the shrewd storyteller that he was on our show last week, just kept us in eager suspense. And right at the end, right at the end, right as we were running out of time, he says, in my number one pick of the year, he talks three billboards, which is just a masterful, controversial work of art. And I said, Mike, leaving Phantom Thread off your list, controversial, and I have to agree with it and I have my reasons for that. But I said, I applaud you for taking a stand, an original stand that probably would not be repeated by many of our peers and many of your peers. But man, controversial, and I'm sure that there's a reason. And he quickly interrupted me and said, "Oh no, I'm really sorry. I forgot that's my tie for my number one film of the year." And I just was left in this sort of baffled, stunned.
You were speechless,
stuttering silence. And I was like, well, that moment when you're caught on air being just as wrong as you can be. There's nothing quite like it. I said,
what
wow.
a thrill.
And, he only got to cover his take on the film for like 20 seconds, but I would say Phantom Thread is right next to Killing of a Sacred Deer in terms of, it's one of those films that are just so undoubtedly great, and you're watching it, and every second of the film, you're just like, there's nothing like this that's come out this year. This movie demands my attention. This movie demands my time. This is a film that is worthy of people's time. And, there's just something I left the film without the sense of wholeness. And I was like, man, every individual facet of that film is I hate using the word perfect, Mark. And over the years, you've talked about these sort of irrelevant adjectives. Especially the more you use them, the more irrelevant they become. But I don't know that I saw a film this year that falls more into the realm of like these perfect attributes, these perfect items in the film.
Go for it.
And Paul Thomas Anderson makes films that are just indescribable. They're otherworldly, and they're majestic gifts to the human race. They're treasures for the humanities, for the collective of time. And we're very lucky to have those things. And it's just almost criminal that these films are as underwatched at times as they are. I mean, they make like $50 million at the box office or whatever, but like compared to like what Black Panther makes in its opening weekend, which is a fine movie. Don't get me wrong. I saw it, and it's for a mainstream movie about people with capes, even though he doesn't wear a cape. you could do a lot worse. But it's just watching a film like Phantom Thread, especially when it's being projected on film and it's shot on film, and you just have these just delicious attributes. You just taken into this other world that's like nothing else that's put out today. There's a few peers here and there. There's a few filmmakers that have dabblings of similar styles and have that other, even if it's not in similar style, like precise, like the actual type of film that P.T. Anderson makes, the quality and the otherworldliness of his films, the way that they take your mind to other places that few entertainments are really calculating to do and are able to do. And I left the theater marveling at all these attributes, and I thought, well, what's the final film, though? What are the components of these pieces? Does it add up? What kind of equation? What kind of outcome? And I still can't figure out what I think of that film. And that's either the highest compliment or the worst of insults. And the fact that I can't decide, I think, is probably, it leans on highest praise. Because it just is. It's a marvel.
Wait, what are we talking about now? Phantom Thread?
Phantom Thread.
Okay,
Phantom
gotcha.
Thread.
I just wanted to bring it back around, man, because I was like starting to drift, and it was like, man, I better say something at some point.
Oh, absolutely. But Mark, I, Tanya, Phantom Thread, really, really quality stuff.
Yeah, they're still playing, so there's still a shot at it.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of good films that I saw this year. There's a lot of quality documentaries that I saw, especially on HBO. I've talked about this numerous times on the show this year. HBO documentaries just knocked it out of the park this year, and Netflix documentaries were just as good as anything. And mostly because they commissioned and they acquired just a high quality of really artful films. So there's just there's just all this really cool stuff that's out there. Darren Aronofsky's Mother.
Dude, that's another one. You're right. I should make a Mother, The Killing of a Sacred Deer. Okay, those. Yep. Thank you, Gabe.
Yep,
I mean, I did.
Mother,
they are written down. I mean, it's just that you gotta, obviously be reminded, and then so and hopefully that'll all be taken care of.
Absolutely. Well, and even films that I actively.
You're not going to get bit, are you?
What's up?
You're not going to get bit by those dogs, are you?
No, thank you. No. They're in the distance. But even a movie that I didn't actively enjoy and even disliked to a certain degree, you can learn a lot about quality filmmaking that just just doesn't work for the viewer for whatever reason. And listening to interviews with filmmakers discussing the precision and the reasoning and their process on a film that you even didn't like can really reveal layers to a film that you maybe didn't see or that you didn't realize you saw. It can change the way that the film exists in your mind's eye or in your memory's eye. Definitely the case of that happening this year. It happens every year with several films, but The Shape of Water was something that I had read all this praise and all this, all these accolades about, and I just, had heard some of these other opinions about the film that it just doesn't quite work. It just doesn't all add up, and there's something missing. There appears to be something kind of rushed about the movie. But it at the same time, people were saying that visually it was the strongest and the most beautiful and just otherworldly film that Guillermo del Toro's ever made in a filmography of films that are already just unspeakably otherworldly, indescribably precise and dreamlike at the same time. So saw this film, didn't care for it, didn't like it, talked to a lot of people that didn't like it either.
Oh, you didn't dig Shape of Water? Yeah, that's not on my list, my man.
No, it's it's got some really strong stuff. It's got some beautiful qualities, but man, it's a producer's film over a director's film.
Okay.
but it's precise, and it's got great filmmaking, Mark. It's got visuals. It's a visual treat, but ultimately it's just it's like drinking a Diet Coke, and when you're expecting this like strong blast of Coca-Cola, it's just like
an utter disappointment.
Yeah, there's just something off here, and
I would like to say the analogy was colorful and succinct. So thank you.
Yeah, but I actually was just talking today with a friend of mine about how much I love Diet Coke. So I guess it's not an analogy that works for me, but
in general,
back in the day. Exactly. Thank you, Mark. So listening to interviews with Guillermo, I've listened to like 4 or 5 of them, and my take on the film is much different than it used to be, than it was when I initially saw the film. Guillermo del Toro just has this very sharp and buttery, but sharp yet buttery way of speaking, and he's very self-deprecating, and he acknowledges these qualities and these not so becoming aspects of his personality.
Yes, and let me acknowledge the quality of the waning minute for this radio show.
Well, thank you, Mark. So I'll leave people with that if you have an inkling to watch The Shape of Water and you have doubts in your mind, I'll tell you what, don't let my doubts add to those. Go see it anyway. Make up your own mind. It's a better film than I will ever make, than I ever could make. So please go see it and enjoy yourself if you choose to. And if you don't force yourself to. Make up your own mind. You're your own critic. You have your own opinions. So that's your job as a film watcher.
Right on, good fella. Okay, sweet. Gabe, my man, thank you again for your time, your learned realm that you bestow upon us. I'm really actually totally grateful for that. So Gabe, thank you. Have a very, very beautiful night.
Mark, thank you. Thank you to our listeners. And like I said, we'll have Zav on in 1 month. So we'll see you all then. We'll see you next week, too. Bye-bye.
All right. God bless Gabe's heart. So I'm looking at the clock. I got 90 seconds. It's really a trip to be alive, man. It's really a trip. Just even though everything is predetermined since the very first sub-atom split, and absolutely nothing can be changed scientifically. This is predetermined for the next billions of years. I mean, there's no such thing as free will. It's like technically impossible. So this radio show was predetermined billions of years ago when the first subatomic atom or whatever split. There's no such thing as free will. That's scientifically impossible. But what happens is you forget about that and you live like it's a free for all anyway. So you split the difference and everyone still has a good time on it. Last night, man, I fell asleep to Suspense. Sorry, wrong number, but it's one of those tired hazes where you have zero clue what's going on. You hear snatches for a few seconds and then you're being lulled into the vortex of Never Never Land, come back out, hear some more snatches, and it's like this mind-boggling intermittency that makes no sense at all. And then and what did make sense, oh my God, I'm running out of time to say it. Last night I dreamed I was trapped in a car going north on Fond du Lac Avenue with a bunch of normal people. I said, wait, you ain't taking me back home? I got to stay overnight, man. I got out of that car. I was going to walk like 20 miles home, man. We will be on at the same time next week on WXR WLP 104.1 FM Milwaukee. To hear past episodes, visit riverwestradio.com/shows and click Cinema Fireside.